Hey, Brady. You are live on the line with Promise and Owen. How are you tonight?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Doing well.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. I called in on Wednesday and I listened back. It didn't sound like it was very clear. So
I wasn't on Wednesday, and I don't think Owen, were you on Wednesday?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, so you got two new hosts, so we can start from scratch.
Sounds good. Well, sorry about the last caller. I didn't feel like he really provided great evidence for God, or I don't know.
We'll take any
I suppose the validity of
evidence.
Yeah, we'll take any evidence. That would be great.
All righty, sounds good. Anything? Well, no, I won't go there. So, what is your guys's understanding of faith and what it means in Scripture?
Faith
Yeah.
Faith has lots of different, based off of all the religious people I've talked to, it has different definitions depending on who you ask. Based on my 20 plus years in Christianity and the different denominations I participated in and the different pastors I grew up around, even between Christians in the same denomination, they'll define faith differently. So I think it would be most helpful if you want to talk about faith, maybe if you define faith for us.
All right. Well, fair enough. So would you guys be opposed to, using faith as an action word? Like it's more of
if you define the word for me, then you can use whatever word, however you want. I just need it to be defined.
So rather than like mere belief, right? That it's like test and trial. If that makes sense.
Tests and trials. Can you explain what you mean by that? Because I feel like we're using one religious term to define another, but I just kind of would like pretend like you're explaining this to somebody who's never heard of any of this before.
So,
and just to clarify, you're saying that faith trials to you, is that right?
Yeah, well, for me, in my experience, and I think it's more. I think there's more validity to this definition of faith than simply just mere belief, right? I think, I don't want to get caught off guard saying that I think, like just because I think there's scriptural evidence for it, but
so you said you think there's evidence for it?
Yeah, well, just to define what faith means, just from a scriptural standpoint.
Well, so Brady, we don't even need to. If you don't want, we don't have to define. Like, I really just want to know. I guess you're a Christian. Is that right? You believe in the Christian God?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about script. Okay, cool. I'd just love to hear why you believe that a God exists. That's what I'd be most interested in hearing. And if you need to use the word faith, you can use that word. But that's the question of the day: is why do you believe that a God exists?
Well, I think for me it goes back to religious experiences. I don't think for I suppose for most people, they read the text and just take it at face value. But that never really worked for me before.
Is it like that? So it sounds like this is like something that you just believe because you believe it, not based on any kind of hard evidence. Does that sound right?
No. Faith is based on hard evidence, but it's dependent on acting on principles and teachings in Scripture.
Faith is based on,
and seeing the promises and the blessings that come from that.
Okay, I'm not sure I fully understand where you're coming from with this.
Well, maybe I can use somewhat of an analogy. So, like, if you were going to a doctor, or I don't know, or I guess if you were sick and you were seeking advice or help from anybody, and other people have had this experience, right? They had the same experience that you've had. You go to them and they give you a number of things to do to treat yourself, but I mean, you don't really know for full, if whatever treatment they're giving you is going to help, right?
But we believe that it's going to work because we've seen hard evidence that people who have, for example, had cancer, we've seen hard evidence that these doctors are capable of curing their cancer. Or like we go to an eye doctor, we take it not on faith, but on my definition of faith is what the Bible's definition is. Basically, belief in things unseen, i.e., belief without evidence. I'm not going to a doctor and assuming he's going to cure my cancer on faith. It's based on evidence, not faith. They're mutually exclusive. If you have faith,
I don't think they are, though.
And if you have evidence, you don't need faith.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't think those things are necessarily mutually exclusive, because I think the evidence for faith comes from behavioral changes. It can be seen in behavioral changes, or
But Brady, I know people that are atheists that were Christians, and when they were Christians, they were making terrible decisions and they were not displaying what you would call the fruit of the Spirit. And now that they aren't believing anymore, they've made other changes in their life. They are, I would say that they have what you would probably experience as the fruit of the Spirit. They have joy in their life. They have peace. They're like, so I've seen that. I've also seen people that were Christian and then converted to Islam, and they've had behavioral changes. So again, that's not getting us to evidence for a God. That's evidence that different things you believe and different changes you make in your life impact how you behave. But we're still not getting to any, like, why should Owen and I believe that there's a God? Like, what can you point to for us?
I mean, for me, I can point to you guys. I can probably point you guys to my own religious experiences, but
do you think that personal experiences are a good reason to believe entire reality changes? Like, if I told you that I had an experience that aliens came and took over my house and then disappeared, do you think do you think me really thinking that happened is a good reason for you to believe that there are aliens now that are taking over people's houses?
No, but I think it depends on what we're I don't know. I suppose it really depends more on the story, though. What, like, I would have to know the full context of the story.
I don't think it depends on the story. I think that there are people out there that have very convincing abduction stories, and they believe it. They are more confident they're right than I am confident that I'm right. Like I'm 95% sure I'm correct on the things that I believe, but they're 110% sure. So they're even halfway believable stories. They saw an object in the sky and they didn't know how it was moving or whatever. Even halfway believable stories doesn't make it credible enough for me to believe, because it's an extraordinary claim, and I'm going to need more than just a little bit of evidence to believe the claim. Now, I can say anything about whatever, and it's not a big deal. Like I can say I have banana cream pie in my fridge, and it's not a big deal. Like, who cares? It's a thing. But the claim that God exists or doesn't is not low stakes. It affects people's lives deeply. So I'm going to need extraordinary evidence for that extraordinary claim.
Yeah. Well, I think, well, there's a scripture that says, let him, what's the scripture again? Somewhere in James, I think. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. And that can mean
Brady,
several different things to you guys.
I understand, right? But why should we listen to you versus somebody calling in and quoting any other book?
Like a Muslim, for example.
I think Muslims, that's a good question, because, well, I mean, I personally think
Brady,
Christians, Muslims, and Jews, we all worship the same God. It's just based on minor interpretations, right?
What about Hindus?
Hindus? I'm sure they will. I don't know. I'm sure we all worship the same God.
Well, Hindus believe in multiple gods. So, but can I ask you this?
Well, they do believe in multiple gods, but it's like it's.
I had the banana cream pie in my fridge. Evidence. There you go.
Banana cream pie evidence. I love it.
Yeah.
But Brady, you don't have to answer this, but I have a question for you. How long have you been a Christian?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you my background just really quick. So I did grow up in the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints. But
I think someone
really
correctly.
What's that?
I think someone in the chat guessed that correctly. You used to be a Mormon then, or are you still a Mormon?
Really? Oh wow, they guessed it, huh? Yeah. So I'm a member of the church now, and but I didn't receive a testimony. Maybe I don't think even until this past year. And last fall I didn't really. I want to say I really dealt with much of necessarily a faith crisis, but it was enough to get me to really question like whether God was real. I think at the time I was felt pretty suicidal.
Okay.
And I was struggling with a lot of other things too. Like
were you, this is super personal, so you don't have to answer. Are you in your mid-20s?
Yeah.
Cool. So I just want to throw this out there. First of all, I'm so sorry that you were struggling with that. I've been there. It's not a fun place to be. I unfortunately do think a lot of us go through that in our 20s. And I stopped believing in a God when I was about 26, 27, 26, actually. I was turning 26. And it was through it was a process. It was a lot of searching. I was trying to get actively closer to God because I was in desperate need of God's closeness in my life. And it was through that searching and that seeking that I discovered nobody was there on the other line. And so I think that what we're hearing and why somebody even predicted in chat that you are Mormon is because you sound to me as though you're following a bit of a script, which is how I sounded when I was still religious, following the things that I'd been taught my whole life because I just really needed them to be true. And I was so terrified of what would my life be if these things weren't true, if I didn't hold on to them. And I would just encourage you to go back and listen to this call and hear where Owen and I really weren't getting answers from you.
I would have to push back on that a little bit.
I'm almost done, and then I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah,
and
of course.
I understand that you've had personal experiences and all that. I had hundreds of what I would call spiritual encounters or experiences with God. I was in my perspective now, I was crediting them to a source that I had no business crediting them to when there was other explanations for them. And so I think that there's more questions that you, for your own sake, and maybe you'll ask all the questions and you'll get to the point where you're like, no, I really believe this stuff and this is why. But I don't think you're there yet. I think there's a lot more questions, and I think it's a good thing to go ask and figure out and find out for yourself based off something other than just, well, I felt this way one time, and so I've got to find ways to pull all these back to this one thing that I've been believing my whole life that would absolutely rock my world if I discovered wasn't true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I didn't grow up believing really my whole life. Like I don't think I really understand any conception of what God was when I was younger, growing up, just because I never really put in the time to, in the church I grew up in, right? But I don't know, like, if you don't mind me asking about your experience when you were in your 20s, did you, what was my question here? Did you, so you said you were struggling at the time, but
yeah, I was dealing with I was dealing with undiagnosed OCD, with anxiety, with depression. I had all of it. And funny enough, since I've been working with therapists and everything, we've been able to trace so much of it back to religious trauma, basically, that started when I was like 3. And and was able to I was able to learn all kinds of different tools and emotional skills, and my mental health has only gotten better every year since then. I'm now in a place where I can like host shows like this and have these conversations, and I don't feel crippled by, anxiety and depression and all of that. And so I think a big part of me ending up on this side of things was letting myself fully go through everything and ask all the difficult questions and just do it fearlessly, because I had reached a point where it was like, you know what, nothing can be worse than where I'm at right now at this point. Like, if I have to blow my whole life up and start everything over again, but I find out what is true and what's real, and I stop giving my life over to things that I don't have a reason to, like that was worth it to me. And it ended up being a really, it felt like a tough gamble at the time, but I realized, no, it wasn't a gamble. It was me setting my values in life, which is I want to believe things that are true, and I don't want to believe things that I don't have a good reason to believe. And once I was able to stay that course, it has helped me so much moving forward in the rest of my life.
Yeah. And I don't want to guilt anybody to believing in God, because that's completely immoral.
It's okay. It's happened to me before.
Yeah. when you were, I'm just curious, but like when you were going through that time and you were questioning like God's existence, I suppose, like were you, what were you dependent on him? Were you dependent on knowing if he was real? Because I know for me, like at the time, I was, um, like I demanded pretty physical proof that, you know, like that God had to reveal himself to me, like in some way, right? Some miraculous way. Like I thought, you know, if it happened for Joseph Smith, you know, like maybe it should happen for me, you know, but I'm not going to believe um, if, you know, if that doesn't happen for me. So, I don't know. Was that your experience?
Yeah, there was a lot of that, but there was also a lot of me kind of learning how to think critically for the first time. So, yes, I had my moments where I was definitely like crying out to God, like, show me something, anything, like, let me know. Like, if you're all powerful God and if you're all loving, then surely
Yeah.
you are hearing how genuine I'm being in this moment. Surely you'll throw me, but like, give me something. Because I was trying to believe. I always say like becoming an atheist is something that happened to me. I didn't choose it at all. It happened. And I was actively fighting it. So I was like, ask like, God, please give me some kind of reason. Any God, whichever God. Maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I picked the wrong one. Like show me something, you know?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
got nothing, but it wasn't just that because I also started researching, you know, like it's such a long story as to why I was even doing that because it wasn't even for personal reasons at the time. But researching, you know, mystical experiences, you know, personal encounters with gods or with anything supernatural, and I realized that those are not good reasons to believe something because the way our brains work and everything. I was also a worship leader at the time, and so I was kind of pulling some of my own experiments, you know, in this evangelical church where it's like, well, if I raise my hands, then more people suddenly think they felt the Holy Spirit. That's interesting, you know, the manipulation tactics and all of that. And
yeah.
And so, you know, there was so many it wasn't just like one thing. There was a lot to it. And it was basically all the questions I ever had my whole life kind of coming to a head. So yeah, there was kind of like this one moment, but then also it was just like, oh, okay, this is where I've landed. And I don't think I have a good reason to believe any of this is true. And so I'm going to move forward with my life now, knowing that I got this wrong. And that's where I landed.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear if Owen has anything to say about any of this because I've just been yapping this whole time.
No, that's fine. I'm just kind of kicking back and listening to the conversation. It sounds like the reason that you believe is because you kind of grew up believing it and it's just in you to believe it. Is that,
or maybe not
No,
even
I didn't
believing
grow
it,
up
but like
believing in it.
being
No.
exposed to it. Being exposed to it is what I would say.
yeah.
I was
Does that
I was
sound right?
exposed to it. I was exposed to it, but like, you know, like I like I left the church for like 4 years, or so, and I mean, I came back um around the time after college, just to um just to see if there was anything I was missing. You know, like I thought maybe it might have been worth exploring. I think I had some reason to believe, or at least try it out, back then. But you know, like it wasn't really until this year I was really struggling, and you know, and you know, and I you know, and I grew up, um um well, I don't know, I don't know, is my name Brady, right? Is that the that's what's showing?
That is what they put down, Brady. Yes. Is that not
Okay,
the name?
okay, yeah. Just want to make sure. You know, like I mean, I grew up, you know, like um, with a pretty, severe addiction to porn, you know, and, you know, and I think ever since I was 8, you know, I got addicted at 8, and, you know, and I was really dependent on, um, like I was really hoping that at the time, like last fall, like that I would be, you know, that God was there, but it just kind of felt like nothing was happening. But and you know, and you know, at the time, a friend challenged me to question my beliefs, you know, whether, you know, everything was really true or not, and you know, and that just kind of like plummeted me down a spiral, and but you know, I listened to, you know, and this was not my reason for believing, but it got me at least questioning, kind of like, at least it did for Promise, in her story. It got me questioning and maybe thinking, oh, it's like maybe there is a God, but maybe there isn't. I don't know. But I listened to the Exodus series from Jordan Peterson.
The series.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys.
Jordan.
I don't know if you
that's
guys
Jordan
have
Peterson.
watched that, but
I'm familiar. I'm very familiar with it. Yeah.
And you know, I'm not. I don't want. You know, I don't want to make it into like a political debate or anything. You know, like I said, that's another day. But I did listen to that debate, and there were a lot of things that that did get me thinking, and maybe at least appreciate the text for just for more of its poetic nature. But you know, but I don't think it was until the new year started, and I was talking to I was talking to a friend and her husband, and about the existence of God, and you know, and whether he would really answer, you know, and um and like you know, I wasn't really I wasn't really looking forward to putting any effort into praying, you know, or even reading the scriptures at all. But I think at the you know, but after our conversation, you know, they said they would pray for me, and you know, and the next day, I felt somewhat in a different mood, and than I was before, and was ready to I don't know, thought, you know, at least had a different mood to attitude towards taking the time to read the scriptures, and you know, to try it out, and you know, just because of hearing about their experiences, and and you know, reading other people's experiences and their
Yeah. I think
and what God was like for them, and that was more of a, but I think, but I I think in the same moment, yeah, like in the same moment, I received a message from another friend, who had known nothing about the conversation before, but I do think he was inspired at least to send it to me, and it was you know, and it was a quote from um from one of my church leaders, and it said, "As I promise you, as you daily immerse yourself in the Book of Mormon, as you daily immerse yourself in the Book of Mormon, you're what was the rest of that quote anyway?"
Brady, I'm sorry that we keep interrupting, but we've got other calls, so I'm just trying to get us to a good ending place here.
Okay.
And you're welcome to call back sometime. But I do think what we're getting to over and over again is that you, like Owen said, you've had some personal experiences that you're penning back to the way you grew up, which is super, like, that is what we do as humans. That is absolutely what we do. And that makes sense. I also just want to tell you about a resource. that I think you should check out. You don't have to be an atheist or become an atheist to use it or anything. It's called recoveringfromreligion.org. They're amazing. And some of the things you described to me sound like some potential religious trauma or things that come up due to being raised in a like fundamentalist cult type situation. And if that's not true, great, good. I hope that that's not true. I hope that's not a reflection of how you grew up. However, it would be worth you going to check it out and just seeing if you're like, oh, you know what, that does check a box. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully you go look and you're like, this girl is crazy and she doesn't know about me and she doesn't know my life and this is wrong. Maybe though, there's some things there that would really help you. Because I know that I didn't know about that resource when I was going through everything. And if I had it, it would have made my life so much easier. They have like a hotline there. They have all kinds of stuff. It's totally worth checking out. But I'm going to end it there. I appreciate you calling. I appreciate you having an honest conversation with us. Again, you're welcome to call back sometime. Chewed Gum is Tuesday nights. Alyssa and I are super chill, cool. We love having these conversations as well. So
well, sorry to take so much up a lot of your time. But yeah, thank you.
No, I'm glad you called. Thanks, Brady. All right. Yeah, I think we're just getting to like personal experience was the root of it. And also, I know some people in the chat are saying like they think that's a troll because of the time taken. I don't think you guys understand the courage it takes some people to call and have an honest conversation on here. And so sometimes you just it's harder to gather your thoughts. It can be. So I'm not willing to like say somebody was a troll just because they take longer to say something. I don't think that's indicative of that.
Hey, if you liked this video, why don't you click that like button?
And if you didn't
like it, you would say,
subscribe.
Okay.
You didn't give me a chance.
There was such a long pause.
What are you on speed or something? I barely had a chance.
Let's try again. Hey, I hope you liked. Hey there. I hope you liked that clip. Hey, I hope you liked that clipper just now, the one that you just watched with your eyes. If you did like it, why don't you click that like button?
And if you didn't like it, tell Jimmy to go fuck himself.
Hey, I hope you liked that clip right now. If you did like it, why don't you hit that like button?
And if you didn't like it, go ahead and subscribe anyway.